Hey everyone, it's Arya,
And there's Josiah.
and we're back for another video. We apologize for the hiatus during this time. We recently just gone through the ringer. We applied for residency, and we're super excited to say that we've matched. So we just wanted to talk about our experiences and hopefully help our rising, fourth years and people getting ready to apply. Just give some advice on the whole process and make things maybe a little easier for you all. All right, let's get in it.
All right, so you probably will, if you have not already, have a number of conversations from your school giving you all the details about the ERAS application. There's a lot to it, but we just wanted to highlight a couple pearls that we felt like were good from our perspective. So some of the main components are that personal statement. And what I really want to highlight is to stay true to your own story. You're going to get a lot of advice if depending on how many people you have involved in reading your reading and editing your personal statement, and it can go through a lot of changes. But really try and be honest about what your story is, what your reason for applying is, because that's what matters. Make sure to sell yourself, sell your accomplishments some way in there. And then a really important point is to make sure that your interest in the specialty that you're applying to is stated explicitly. If you're applying to radiology, for example, don't make it vague about you've developed a love for imaging or whatnot without explicitly saying that you are interested in applying to radiology. It's just something that I've learned programs are very particular about. Next, you have the work and activities section, which again, this depends on you. It's great to have diversity and a lot of different experiences. If it's something that is interesting to talk about, put it on there. Programs like to see a lot of different things. It doesn't have to just be research experiences. And then lastly, hobbies. The hobby section was back for our cycle this year, and what I found was it is something that is very frequently brought up by interviewers in your interview process. They want to talk about it, and also just sort of in some ways maybe see if what you're talking about is true. So definitely don't lie, don't try and embellish hobbies that are not true to you, because it will come up.
Yeah, and just like from, going to the personal statement, I definitely think one thing I learned was kind of say exactly why, for example, radiology. I'll give explicit reasons for why you're choosing the specialty, maybe over something else. I think it definitely is helpful, of course, to say why radiology, what makes it so unique that brings your interest into it. So that's definitely something I would key in on, and some advice I got in my early drafts of my personal statements. And kind of going and work in activities, yeah, it is really kind of broad. If you're a very research heavy individual, don't be afraid to put the research on there. If you're big in volunteering, add a few volunteering activities, feel free to talk about that. So it really, depends on you, that's a great way to kind of show how well rounded you are. And the hobbies, yeah, for sure. They're gonna. I think there hasn't been a. I think Josiah can attest. There hasn't been a single interview where it didn't come up in some way, shape, or form. For one thing, I put Legos in, and I think in one an interviewer asked me to show one of my Lego pieces on camera. So yeah, definitely, be honest, and it's a great way to strike up a normal conversation during interviews too. All right, and so just a little bit about kind of the whole, the signals, geo preference, and all that. I know it's so overwhelming, and there's so many different, things that might be going in your head. For our cycle, at least, the way we had 15 signals total for radiology, diagnostic radiology, we got 6 gold and 9 silver. And at the same time, you have the opportunity to choose from to preference 3 different regions. And what I learned is that some regions may want more of a connection. So some regions kind of like to take applicants or interview applicants who are maybe from the area, have family from that area, or maybe done it away in that area. So, definitely something they look into when you're applying and signaling regions. The biggest yield will be from places that get the signal regional preference combo. If you've signaled them and they're within your regional preference, those are kind of going to be the highest yield. But that, yeah, I still did get interviews outside of my geographic preferences as well as outside of my signals too. So, you're not necessarily locked into just that and that's all you get, but just keep in mind that that's where you might get the most yield. And also for certain regions, don't be afraid to do like a specific personal statement. I did for a couple of my regions, kind of write a little blurb at the very end, like maybe a sentence or two, as long as it keeps within the margins, as to why I wanted to come here. What, like, why do I want to come to this region? I have family here. I mentioned that. Stuff like that can definitely like make you stand out when applying as well too. And another thing is when you're looking at programs, don't just consider prestige. I know it's easier to go online, look at, what's the top 10 ranked radiology programs or something like that, but gotta consider location. Are you close to friends and family? What are your vibes? Do you feel like you're gonna vibe with it, or do you feel like you and the residents there and the faculty would get along? You are spending a good chunk of time at that institute, and use resources like Residency Explorer as well as your school's own internal data. Some schools might kind of publish what your own home programs like interview successes at different places where the signals have been the highest yield. So definitely don't be afraid to reach out to a mentor and advisor. And I'd like to shout out to Dr. Owan here at Maryland, who's been so helpful for us.
Want to definitely echo what Aria was saying on those last points as well. Residency Explorer and your school's internal data are great resources, but also don't be so stuck up on data. Apply to the programs and signal the programs that you want to go to as well. There's a lot of data, and sometimes things can, programs might be looking at things that are different than just what you see on your Residency Explorer average step 2 range or whatnot. So just think broadly.
Yeah, absolutely. You're more than just a score.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about away rotations. And fortunately, each of us did away rotation. I did mine in diagnostic radiology, while Aria did his in interventional radiology, and both are a little bit different. But overall, our takeaways. So for my perspective in diagnostic radiology, they are not generally seen as mandatory, but it is a great way to show interest in programs that you are particularly interested in going into, and especially programs where maybe you don't have any close family connections or any geographical ties. Going to do an array rotation at that location can show that you're serious about maybe wanting to move in that location. So it's a great way to show specific interest into a program. Now, for diagnostic, there is not a ton of opportunities to blow away program directors and faculty with your fund of knowledge. They will not be blown away by the fund of knowledge of an R1. And so most certainly they're probably not going to be blown away by how well an M4 is able to interpret diagnostic imaging. But you do want to take that time to really try and build connections, be polite, try and expose yourself to as much of the department as you can. And then this can also be very helpful when interviews come around, especially if you're interviewing, hopefully, at this program that you did an away rotation at. You might recognize some of those faculty on your interview panel, which will be very helpful as well. The process for away rotations can vary. You all will probably have discussions with your schools about this, but most are done through the VISLO application, but there are also some different methods of applying, so just pay attention to that process. Usually you'll be sending out these apps around like early January, I'd say.
Yeah, I think I would say like February, March, some open earlier or later.
Right. Yeah, and then I don't know if Aria had any specifics on the IR rotation.
Yeah. Ultimately, I went with DR residency just because that's what I loved the most. But I did IR just to experience it more. I thought it was great. I think as Josiah mentioned, with DR, it might be a little harder to kind of really, kind of show off or kind of on these DR rotations in ways. But to speak for DR, I think the big way to like show interest is kind of just be a good student, come in on time, try to show excitement, try to show interest and ask questions within, read the room, of course. If they're busy, you don't want to bother them, but just being a good fit and adding to the culture of the room really, I think, goes a long way in making that good impression. With IR, it's a lot more of comfort with kind of some of the procedural aspects. Are you able to help tie in lines, or are you able to maybe get comfortable, doing paras, stuff like that. But it's kind of also similar. Just a good attitude gets you so far in, not just in medicine, but just in life, of course. One thing I did realize is the residents can be sometimes your best advocates. That's why I think, definitely talking to residents, becoming, developing a good relationship with them, they will advocate for you if they really like you. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of moving pieces here.
All right, now on to the fun part, the interview preparation. Um, so finally, when interviews start running around, general advice is just prepare your general questions very well. You will be asked that why radiology, that why tell me about yourself, almost every single interview. So it's good to have those answers prepared. Try and avoid rambling, but also try and avoid being overly robotic and sounding rehearsed, because it is a conversational style interview for radiology in particular. So preparedness definitely helps. Try to conduct mock interviews, at least get one mock interview if you can. It doesn't have to be within your specialty, but a big part of this is just getting practice speaking out loud. I think both of us can attest the interview process gets a lot easier as you do more of them. And so your hardest interviews will likely just be your first couple of ones until you're used to answering these questions. And then it becomes almost fun. You're just having a conversation and talking about yourself in a way that you're very comfortable doing. Big thing, definitely prepare thoughtful questions. I mean, there have been plenty of interviews where there's a 15-minute period, or maybe the interviewer asks only one question, and then the rest is, what questions do you have for us? And it's not the best look if you only have maybe one question and it's generic. So try and think of some questions that are strong. Definitely for programs where you're very interested in, think of some good program-specific questions, and just sort of have those in the back of your head before starting. Another little small thing, at least for our interview cycle, the interviews were conducted on Zoom for diagnostic radiology this cycle. And so consider your background, what's showing up in your Zoom background. It's fine to have a blank background, but if you do have certain pictures or a plant or Legos in your background or whatnot, anything that's visible to the interviewers is fair game to discuss. I remember I had a picture in one of my interviews of like New York City in my background, and an interviewer asked me about my interest in New York during the interview. So they take notice of everything, and just take that into mind when you're setting up your background. And then lastly, just be yourself. Try and be as comfortable as you can when you're looking at the other applicants, considering that these people are potentially going to be your co-residents as well. So just try and relax and have fun as much as you can.
Yeah, I know. I think just I covered all the main points. I think just to give an example of the tell me about yourself, which you will probably be asked almost every interview. I think kind of the way I did mine is I kind of, I gave a broad, short story of like where I'm from, kind of a bit about my upbringing and like my family, and then kind of like my journey through medicine. So I talked about kind of like college, what drew me to medicine in college, then what drew me kind of towards radiology in med school, and then I kind of ended on like a few things about my personal life, like my interest in sports or my relationship with my significant other, and how she's also helped me become a better too. And I think stuff like that, those touches really go a long way in the interview process and make you more approachable and easy to talk to.
All right. Last little bit will be thank you letters and sending a letter of intent. This is something that you may or may not be super familiar with, but it is a part of the interview process, is whether or not you should send out a thank you letter. And in general, thank you notes are usually advised, at least if nothing else, to send to the program director, but usually to all the people who interviewed you on a particular day. Doesn't have to be long, but a small little blurb saying thank you, and maybe if there was an interesting thing that you guys talked about that you want to reference, that is usually good advice. But just pay attention to what the program says about communication during the interview season. There are some programs that will very explicitly say, like, do not communicate with us unless you have a specific question afterwards. I've had some programs say, please do not send thank you letters. We know you are thankful. And so if you're sending out a thank you letter there, it might be, seen as not paying attention or trying to do too much. So just pay attention to what guidelines they give you. And then for letters of intent, main points will be to be aware of timelines. So know that programs usually finalize their rank order list before applicants. So if you're waiting too long to send a letter of intent, they may have already set in stone their rank order list, and then it won't be doing you much good. And then some programs, they care a lot about a letter of intent. Some explicitly want a letter of intent. Other programs, it doesn't matter as much. Again, this will be a discussion you'll probably be having with your advisors and your mentors more so when the time comes. But these are just some tips to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, for sure. And just some general advice, I know, Josiah and I did it. We've been through it. You're gonna go through Reddit. We know you are. It's okay. You're gonna go through the Discord once the cycle opens.
Yeah.
You're gonna be looking at what people say. You're gonna be listening to. You're gonna hear and read all these scary stories. These sites can be helpful for sure, but I think it's also possible to get information overload and to be disheartened. So we just want to let you know it's make sure you selectively read what's out there. If it's stuff that you find will be helpful, and like Reddit, I use to help with coming up with good interview questions and help with that process. That's great. But when you start seeing all these things, all this negative stuff, do not get lost in that sauce. Just focus on yourself. Talk to your support systems. We've stressed this. Get a mentor. A good mentor can help you through so much, can ease so much of your stress. And hang out with your friends, have fun. This is when you become a fourth year, it's scary, but it's also a fun time. You're pursuing a field you're interested in. You're gonna have the extra time to have fun with friends and family, and so definitely have fun and work with each other. Josiah and I are both applied rads, and we've been working on these videos, and then we've gone into coffee shops together before and talked about how to help each other out with the interview process and residency apps too. So, work with each other, find your people. And I think that's all the advice we have.
Yeah, I'll definitely echo all of that. I'll say fourth year was an amazing time.
Oh, yeah.
I would say I've loved fourth year.
It's been great.
The sub-Is are actually getting treated like a physician a little bit more so, and that's exciting. Having some time off for some travel is amazing. And then again, as we sort of talked about with the interview process, once you're in interview season and you get into your flow, it just starts becoming a lot easier, a lot more fun. And definitely want to echo that. Avoid looking at over statistics just because you see maybe a Reddit post with someone dropping their specific step score and whatever qualifications and a horror story of not getting any interviews or whatnot. That does not mean that is you or your work and activities, your hobbies, your letters of recommendation. So just try to avoid those over information circles and have some fun.
Yeah, man. We hope this was helpful for you all, and good luck this cycle, all right? We wish you all the best.